A loving grandmother or a hidden betrayal. After years of medication, a young girl uncovers the truth that will change her life forever. Get ready to be surprised by this emotional story, but before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and attract 10 years of good luck. In the historic district of Beacon Hill, Boston, where cobblestone streets whispered tales of centuries past, 14-year-old Emily Thompson sat in her wheelchair by the bay window of her grandmother's Victorian mansion. Her delicate fingers traced patterns on the glass, following the path of raindrops that trickled down the other side. The autumn leaves danced outside, creating a kaleidoscope of amber and crimson that seemed to mock the stillness of her own existence. Emily had lived with her grandmother Margaret since she was 4, after her mother Claire relocated to Europe for what was supposed to be temporary medical research. 10 years had passed, and the temporary had somehow morphed into permanent. The only remnants of her mother were the occasional postcards that arrived from different European cities, each bearing the same apologetic tone about groundbreaking research that kept her away. The mansion, despite its grandeur, felt like a beautiful cage. Margaret Thompson, a former nurse with an impeccable reputation in Boston's medical community, had devoted her life to caring for Emily since her diagnosis with a rare neuromuscular condition at age 4. The diagnosis had come shortly after Claire's departure, and it had transformed Emily's world into a carefully controlled environment of medications, treatments, and constant supervision. "Time for your medicine, sweetheart," Margaret's voice floated through the house, accompanied by the familiar sound of her soft footsteps on the hardwood floors. Emily turned her wheelchair away from the window, watching as her grandmother approached with a silver tray bearing an array of colorful pills and a glass of water. Behind her walked Mr. Harrison, their private nurse, his presence as constant as the grandfather clock that chimed in the hallway. "How are you feeling today, Emily?" Mr. Harrison asked, his kind blue eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. He had been with them for as long as Emily could remember, a steady presence who monitored her condition and adjusted her treatments under Margaret's watchful eye. "The same as yesterday," Emily replied, managing a small smile. "And the day before that, and the day before that." She took the pills one by one, a ritual so familiar she could probably do it blindfolded. The bitter taste of medicine had become as routine as breathing. The monotony of her days was broken only by visits from her best friend, Sarah Chen, whose family lived next door. Sarah was everything Emily wasn't: vibrant, athletic, and free to explore the world beyond the mansion's ornate walls. Yet somehow, their friendship had flourished despite their differences, or perhaps because of them. That afternoon, as Sarah burst into the room with her usual energy, Emily felt the familiar warmth of friendship cutting through the perpetual chill of her confined existence. Sarah's dark eyes sparkled with excitement as she dropped her backpack on the floor and pulled up a chair next to Emily's wheelchair. "You won't believe what happened at school today," Sarah began, launching into an animated story about their classmates and teachers. Emily attended classes virtually, connecting to their private school through a sophisticated setup that Margaret had arranged. While it allowed her to maintain her education, it also meant that Sarah was her primary connection to the outside world. As Sarah chatted, Emily noticed something unusual through the window: a group of people carrying donation boxes into the community center across the street. The boxes bore logos of various medical charities, and Emily could have sworn she saw her name written on one of them. "Sarah," Emily interrupted, pointing to the window. "What's happening over there?" Sarah's story trailed off as she followed Emily's gaze. A flicker of something, was it discomfort, crossed her friend's face before she quickly changed the subject. "Oh, just some community thing. Hey, did you finish that history assignment about the American Revolution?" But Emily couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to the story. Later that evening, after Sarah had gone home and Margaret was preparing dinner, Emily wheeled herself to her grandmother's study, a room she rarely entered. The door was slightly ajar, and voices drifted out into the hallway. "The community fundraiser exceeded expectations," Mr. Harrison was saying. "They're so moved by Emily's case." "Excellent," Margaret replied. "We must ensure everything continues smoothly. Emily's condition requires constant care, and these resources are essential." Emily backed her wheelchair away silently, her heart pounding. Something about their conversation felt wrong, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. As she retreated to her room, questions began to form in her mind, questions that would soon lead her down a path she never expected, unraveling the carefully constructed world around her. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling, stars that hadn't moved since she was 4, Emily made a decision. She would find out what was really happening beyond the walls of her glass house, even if it meant questioning everything she had ever known to be true. The following morning dawned with a crisp autumn chill that seeped through the mansion's old windows. Emily woke to the familiar routine, Margaret helping her into her wheelchair, the clinking of pill bottles, and the smell of herbal tea wafting up from the kitchen. But today, everything felt different. The previous evening's overheard conversation had planted a seed of doubt in Emily's mind, one that was already beginning to sprout tendrils of suspicion. As Margaret wheeled her to the breakfast nook, Emily studied her grandmother's face. The lines around Margaret's eyes seemed deeper than usual, her smile a little too practiced. Had it always been this way, or was Emily just now noticing? "Good morning, sweetheart," Margaret chirped, setting a plate of whole-grain toast and scrambled eggs in front of Emily. "Mr. Harrison will be here soon for your morning checkup." Emily nodded, pushing the food around her plate. "Grandma," she began hesitantly, "I saw some people carrying donation boxes yesterday. They had my name on them. What was that about?" Margaret's hand paused midair as she was pouring tea. For a split second, something flashed across her face: surprise? Worry? But it was gone so quickly Emily almost thought she'd imagined it. "Oh, that," Margaret said, her voice light. "Just a small community initiative. Nothing for you to worry about, dear. Now, eat up. You need your strength." The explanation felt hollow, but Emily knew better than to push. Instead, she turned her attention to her online classes, connecting to her school through the high-tech setup in the study. As her teacher's voice filled the room, discussing the intricacies of cellular biology, Emily found her mind wandering. During lunch break, Sarah came bursting through the front door, her cheeks flushed from the cool air outside. Ready for some best friend time, she grinned, producing a new board game from her backpack. As they set up the game on Emily's adjustable table, Emily decided to probe gently. "Sarah, you know everyone at school. Have you heard anything about fundraisers for medical stuff?" Sarah's usually animated face stilled for a moment. Not really. Why do you ask?" "No reason," Emily shrugged, trying to keep her tone casual. "Just curious about what goes on out there." They played for a while, the clatter of dice and their laughter filling the room. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah was holding something back. Her friend's eyes kept darting to the door, as if expecting interruption. That afternoon, after Sarah had left and Margaret was busy in the kitchen, Emily made a decision. She wheeled herself to the study, determined to search for any clues that might explain the donations or the whispered conversation she'd overheard. The study was a treasure trove of medical journals, files, and books. Emily's fingers trailed over the spines of leather-bound volumes, many bearing titles she couldn't fully understand. She pulled out a drawer in Margaret's desk, careful not to disturb anything. Inside, she found a stack of letters. The top one caught her eye. It was from her mother, Claire. With trembling hands, Emily unfolded it. "Dearest Margaret," it began. "I hope this letter finds you well. I cannot express how grateful I am for your care of Emily. The research here is progressing, but slowly. There are days I question if I made the right choice in coming here, in leaving Emily behind. But I know she's in the best hands with you. Give her my love, and tell her I'll be home as soon as I can. All my love, Claire." The letter was dated just 2 months ago. Emily felt a surge of emotions, joy at hearing from her mother, confusion about why Margaret had never mentioned it, and a gnawing suspicion that there was more to the story. As she was about to delve deeper, she heard footsteps approaching. Quickly, she replaced the letter and closed the drawer, wheeling herself back just as Margaret entered the room. "Emily, darling. What are you doing in here?" Margaret's voice was laced with concern. "Just exploring," Emily replied, forcing a smile. "I got bored with my usual spots." Margaret nodded, but Emily noticed her eyes darting around the room, as if checking if anything was out of place. "Well, it's time for your afternoon medication. Let's get you back to the living room." As Margaret wheeled her out, Emily's mind was racing. The letter, the donations, the secretive conversations, it all pointed to something bigger. But what? And why did she feel like everyone around her was keeping secrets? That night, lying in bed, Emily made a decision. She needed help to uncover the truth, and she knew just who to ask. Tomorrow, she would confide in Sarah. Together, they would start piecing together this puzzle, no matter where it might lead. As she drifted off to sleep, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the precipice of something life-changing. The comfortable world she had known for so long was beginning to crack, and through those cracks, a new reality was peeking through, one that both terrified and exhilarated her. The next day dawned with a sense of anticipation that Emily could barely contain. As Margaret went through their morning routine, Emily found herself studying every movement, every expression, searching for clues she might have missed before. The weight of the secrets she'd glimpsed felt heavy on her shoulders, but the prospect of sharing them with Sarah gave her a newfound strength. When Sarah arrived after school, her backpack bulging with books and her face flushed from the brisk walk, Emily wasted no time. As soon as Margaret left them alone in Emily's room, she leaned forward in her wheelchair, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah, I need your help. Something strange is going on, and I think you might know something about it." Sarah's eyes widened, and she glanced nervously at the door. "What do you mean, Em?" Emily took a deep breath and recounted everything: the donation boxes, the overheard conversation, and the hidden letter from her mother. As she spoke, she watched Sarah's expression change from surprise to concern, and finally to resignation. I've wanted to tell you for so long," Sarah admitted, her voice quavering. "But I was afraid. Your grandmother, she's so respected in the community, and Mr. Harrison, they said it was for your own good." Emily felt her heart racing. What was for my own good? "Sarah, please, you have to tell me everything." Sarah nodded, taking Emily's hand in hers. "The community has been raising funds for your treatment for years. Everyone thinks you're this miracle case, defying the odds. But lately, there have been whispers. Some people are questioning why there's never any improvement, why the treatments seem to go on forever." Emily's mind whirled with this new information. "But why wouldn't Grandma tell me about the fundraisers? And what about my mom's letter?" Sarah shook her head. "I don't know about any letter, Em. But I do know that people have been asking about your mom. It's like she vanished. No one seems to know exactly where she is or what research she's doing." A chill ran down Emily's spine. The world she thought she knew was unraveling around her, revealing a tangled web of secrets and half-truths. She looked at Sarah, determination setting in her eyes. "We need to find out more. But we have to be careful. If Grandma and Mr. Harrison are hiding things, they can't know we're investigating." Sarah nodded, her face a mix of fear and excitement. "What's the plan?" Emily thought for a moment, then smiled. "You're always leaving your stuff here. What if we hide a small recording device in my room? We might catch some conversations when they think I'm asleep." Sarah's eyes lit up. "I have just the thing. My brother got this tiny voice-activated recorder for his journalism class. I can borrow it tomorrow." As they hashed out the details of their plan, Emily felt a thrill of excitement mixed with apprehension. She was stepping into unknown territory, challenging the very foundations of her life. But the need to know the truth outweighed her fear. The next few days passed in a blur of anticipation and careful observation. Sarah successfully planted the recorder, hiding it cleverly among Emily's books. Every evening, when Sarah visited, they would listen to the recordings, their heads bent close together over the tiny device. Most of the recordings were mundane, Margaret humming as she tidied the room, the distant sound of the TV from downstairs. But on the third night, they struck gold. It was Mr. Harrison's voice, low and urgent. "Margaret, we need to be more careful. Dr. Reeves was asking questions about Emily's medication regimen today. He's suggesting a full reevaluation." Margaret's reply was sharp, "Absolutely not. We've come too far to risk everything now. Increase the dosage of the sedative. We can't have her getting too energetic or curious. Emily and Sarah looked at each other, their eyes wide with shock. Sedatives? Why would they need to keep Emily sedated? But the recording continued, and what they heard next made their blood run cold. Mr. Harrison again, and what about Claire? The last email was concerning. She's talking about coming back. I'll handle Claire, Margaret said, her voice hard. She gave up her rights when she left. Emily is mine now, and I won't let anyone take her away. The money, the attention, the respect, we've worked too hard for this. As the voices faded, Emily felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. Her grandmother, the woman who had cared for her for so long, was deliberately keeping her sick. And her mother, she was alive, trying to come back. Sarah's hand found Emily's, squeezing tight. "Oh, Em," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "What are we going to do?" Emily sat in stunned silence for a moment, the weight of the revelation pressing down on her. Then, slowly, a fire began to burn in her eyes. "We're going to find out the truth," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "All of it. And then, we're going to find my mom." As night fell over the Thompson mansion, two young girls sat in the dim light of a bedside lamp, their heads bent together in whispered conversation. Outside, the wind rustled through the autumn leaves, carrying with it the promise of change. For Emily, the world had shifted on its axis, and nothing would ever be the same again. The revelation from the recording left Emily reeling. Her mind raced with questions, each one more unsettling than the last. How long had this deception been going on? What was her true medical condition? And most pressingly, where was her mother? Over the next few days, Emily and Sarah worked tirelessly to piece together the puzzle. They combed through old medical records that Emily had access to, cross-referencing dates and treatments. Sarah, using her home computer to avoid detection, researched the medications Emily had been taking. This doesn't make sense," Sarah whispered one afternoon, her brow furrowed as she looked at her notes. "Some of these medications, they're not typically used for neuromuscular conditions. And the dosages seem off." Emily felt a mixture of fear and anger bubbling up inside her. "So what have they been giving me all this time?" Sarah shook her head, her eyes filled with concern. "I'm not sure, but it looks like a combination of mild sedatives and drugs that could mimic some symptoms of muscle weakness. Emily, I think they've been keeping you in this condition on purpose." The words hit Emily like a physical blow. She had suspected as much after hearing the recording, but having it confirmed made it all too real. "But why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would they do this to me?" Before Sarah could answer, they heard Margaret's footsteps approaching. Quickly, they hid their notes and pulled out a textbook, pretending to be engrossed in homework as Margaret entered the room. "Girls, it's time for Emily's afternoon treatment," Margaret announced, her voice as sweet as ever. Emily felt a chill run down her spine as she watched her grandmother prepare the usual array of pills. "Actually, Grandma," Emily said, summoning all her courage, "I'm feeling a bit nauseous today. Could we maybe skip the afternoon dose?" A flicker of something, was it panic? Crossed Margaret's face before her practiced smile returned. Now, dear. You know how important your medication is. We can't risk your condition worsening." As Emily reluctantly took the pills, she exchanged a knowing glance with Sarah. They needed to act fast. That night, after Margaret had gone to bed, Emily made a decision that would change everything. With Sarah's help, she carefully maneuvered herself out of her wheelchair and onto the floor. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked, worry etched on her face. Emily nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. "I have to know." Slowly, painfully, Emily began to move her legs. At first, nothing happened. But as she concentrated, focusing all her energy, her toes began to twitch. Then, gradually, she managed to bend her knee. Tears streamed down both girls' faces as they realized the implications. Emily wasn't paralyzed. Weak, certainly, from years of inactivity and medication, but not incapable of movement. "We need to get you out of here," Sarah said urgently. "My parents, they'll help. They've always had doubts about your condition, but they didn't want to interfere." Emily nodded, her mind racing. But we need proof. And we need to find my mom. Over the next few days, they put their plan into action. Sarah secretly reduced Emily's medication, replacing some pills with harmless substitutes. Emily worked tirelessly in secret to regain her strength, pushing herself to move more each day. Meanwhile, they dug deeper into Margaret's correspondence. Hidden in a locked drawer, which Sarah managed to open with a hairpin, they found a trove of letters and emails. Among them was a recent email from Claire, Emily's mother. "Margaret, I'm coming back. I've made a breakthrough in my research, and it's time to bring Emily home. She deserves to know the truth. I'll be there next month. Please, let's end this charade for everyone's sake." The email was dated just a week ago. Armed with this information and the evidence they had gathered, Emily and Sarah knew they had to act before Margaret could intercept Claire's return. They decided to reach out to Sarah's parents for help. One evening, as Margaret was occupied with her weekly bridge game downstairs, Sarah helped Emily record a video. In it, Emily detailed everything they had discovered, demonstrated her newfound ability to move, and pleaded for help. "This is Emily Thompson," she began, her voice shaky but determined. "For years, I've been told I suffer from a debilitating condition. But it's all been a lie. My grandmother and our private nurse have been keeping me medicated and dependent for their own gain. Please, I need help to escape and find my mother. She's coming back for me, and I fear for her safety as well as my own." As they finished recording, both girls were aware that they had just crossed a point of no return. Tomorrow, Sarah would show the video to her parents and set in motion the events that would change their lives forever. That night, as Emily lay in bed, her mind whirled with a mixture of fear, excitement, and hope. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a life beyond the walls of her grandmother's mansion, a life of freedom, truth, and the long-awaited reunion with her mother. Outside, the autumn wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the promise of change. Emily closed her eyes, knowing that when she opened them again, she would be ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in her quest for the truth. The following day dawned with a sense of electricity in the air. Emily woke early, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and fear. Today was the day everything would change. Sarah arrived earlier than usual, her face a mask of determination. "It's done," she whispered as soon as she entered Emily's room. "I showed the video to my parents last night. They were shocked, Em. But they believe you. They're contacting the authorities right now." Emily felt a surge of relief, quickly followed by a wave of anxiety. What happens now? Before Sarah could answer, they heard a commotion downstairs. Raised voices, the sound of the front door opening, and then footsteps thundering up the stairs. Margaret burst into the room, her face ashen. "Emily, darling, we need to leave. Now. There's been a misunderstanding. Mr. Harrison is bringing the car around." Emily's eyes met Sarah's, a silent communication passing between them. This was the moment of truth. "No, Grandma," Emily said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I'm not going anywhere. Not until I know the truth." Margaret's eyes widened in shock, darting between Emily and Sarah. "What are you talking about? Emily, you're not well. You need your medication. Stop." Emily's voice rang out, stronger than she had ever heard it. "No more lies. No more medication. I know what you've been doing, Grandma. And it ends today." The color drained from Margaret's face as she realized her carefully constructed world was crumbling. "You don't understand," she began, her voice trembling. "Everything I did for you. To keep you safe, to give you a purpose." But she was interrupted by new voices calling from downstairs. "Police. Is anyone home?" Sarah rushed to the window, waving frantically. "Up here. We're up here." The next few moments were a blur of activity. Police officers entered the room, followed by Sarah's parents and a woman in a suit who introduced herself as a social worker. Margaret was led away, protesting weakly, while Mr. Harrison was apprehended trying to flee in his car. As the chaos swirled around her, Emily felt oddly calm. She watched as the social worker approached her, speaking in gentle tones about medical evaluations and temporary guardianship. Sarah's parents assured her she would be staying with them until everything was sorted out. But Emily had only one question. "My mom," she said, looking at the social worker. "Can you find my mom?" The woman nodded, her eyes kind. "We're already working on contacting Dr. Claire Thompson. From what we've gathered, she's on her way back to the States. We'll make sure you're reunited as soon as possible." The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity. Emily was taken to a hospital for a comprehensive evaluation. Without the cocktail of medications her grandmother had been administering, her true condition began to emerge. She was weak from years of inactivity, but there was no sign of the debilitating neuromuscular condition she had been told she had. Physical therapists worked with her daily, helping her regain strength and mobility. It was painful and exhausting, but Emily threw herself into the exercises with determination. Each small victory, wiggling her toes, bending her knees, even taking a few shaky steps with support, filled her with a sense of triumph. Sarah visited every day, bringing homework, gossip from school, and unwavering support. "You should see how everyone at school is reacting," she told Emily one afternoon. "You're like a hero, Em. Standing up to all that deception, fighting to uncover the truth. People are inspired by you." Emily blushed at the praise, still unused to thinking of herself as strong or brave. But as she looked at her friend, she felt a surge of gratitude. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Sarah. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." As Emily's strength improved, so did her spirits. The doctors were amazed at her progress, attributing it to her youth and determination. But even as she celebrated each new achievement, there was still an ache in her heart, a longing to see her mother. Then, exactly 1 week after her escape from the mansion, as Emily was working with her physical therapist in the hospital's rehab center, she heard a commotion in the hallway. The door burst open, and there, looking travel-worn but overjoyed, stood Claire Thompson. "Mom," Emily whispered, hardly daring to believe her eyes. "Oh, Emily," Claire breathed, rushing forward to envelop her daughter in a tight embrace. "My brave, beautiful girl. I'm so sorry. I'm here now, and I'm never leaving you again." As mother and daughter clung to each other, years of separation and secrets melting away in the warmth of their reunion, Emily felt a sense of peace wash over her. The road ahead would not be easy, there were still many questions to be answered, relationships to be rebuilt, and challenges to overcome. But for the first time in as long as she could remember, Emily felt truly, completely free. Outside the window, the autumn leaves danced in the breeze, their vibrant colors a testament to the beauty of change and renewal. Emily smiled, ready to embrace whatever the future might hold, knowing that with truth, love, and determination, anything was possible. The days following Claire's return were filled with a whirlwind of emotions, revelations, and adjustments. Emily found herself alternating between joy at being reunited with her mother and struggling to process the years of deception she had endured. The hospital became a sanctuary of sorts, a neutral ground where mother and daughter could begin to rebuild their relationship away from the shadows of the past. Claire, her face etched with guilt and determination, spent every possible moment with Emily. Between physical therapy sessions and medical checkups, they talked for hours, slowly unraveling the tangled web of lies that had kept them apart. "I never should have left," Claire admitted one afternoon, her eyes brimming with tears. "I thought I was doing the right thing, pursuing research that could help children with conditions like what I believed you had. Your grandmother, she convinced me it was for the best, that you were too fragile to travel, that the stability of staying in one place was crucial for your health." Emily listened, her heart aching for the lost years but also swelling with love for the mother who had never stopped trying to help her. "But why didn't you come back sooner?" she asked softly. Claire's face darkened. "Your grandmother's updates, they always made it seem like you were on the verge of a breakthrough, that moving you would be detrimental. And then, when I started to doubt, when I insisted on coming back, there were always complications. Missed connections, lost paperwork, sudden emergencies that required my expertise abroad. I see now that she was manipulating everything to keep us apart." As they talked, more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Margaret, it seemed, had been driven by a complex mix of motivations. There was greed, certainly. The donations and attention from the community had provided her with status and financial comfort. But there was also a twisted form of love and a deep-seated need for control. She lost her own daughter, my sister, to illness when she was young, Claire explained. I think, in her mind, keeping you dependent was a way of keeping you safe, of never losing you like she lost her. Emily shook her head, trying to comprehend the depth of her grandmother's deception. But Mr. Harrison? How did he get involved? Claire sighed. He was Margaret's protégé in nursing school. From what the investigators have told me, she manipulated him too, convincing him that what they were doing was somehow for your own good. He's facing serious charges now, along with your grandmother. The legal proceedings against Margaret and Mr. Harrison were ongoing, a complex case that would likely take months to resolve. Emily tried not to dwell on it, focusing instead on her recovery and on rebuilding her life. Sarah remained a constant presence, visiting almost daily and bringing a much-needed sense of normalcy and friendship. She was there for Emily's first unassisted steps in the hospital corridor, cheering her on with tears of joy in her eyes. "You're amazing, Em," Sarah said, hugging her friend tightly. "I always knew you were strong, but you're like a real-life superhero." Emily laughed, still unused to such praise. "I don't feel like a superhero. I'm just me. Finally, truly me." As Emily's strength improved, the focus shifted to planning for the future. Claire had taken an extended leave from her research position to focus on her daughter's care and recovery. Together, they began to explore options for where they would live once Emily was discharged from the hospital. "We could go back to Boston," Claire suggested tentatively. "Or we could start fresh somewhere new. It's up to you, sweetheart. Whatever you want." Emily considered this, her mind swirling with possibilities. The idea of returning to the place where she had been kept captive for so long was daunting, but there was also Sarah to consider, and the support network they had built. I think I'd like to stay, at least for now," Emily said slowly. "It won't be easy, but this is where my life is. And I don't want to run away. I want to face it head-on and make new, better memories to replace the bad ones." Claire nodded, pride shining in her eyes. "You're so brave, Emily. We'll do this together, whatever comes next." As the weeks passed, Emily's progress continued to astound her doctors. Her muscles, freed from the effects of unnecessary medications, grew stronger daily. She graduated from a wheelchair to a walker, and then to crutches. Each step forward was a victory, a reclaiming of the life that had been stolen from her. One crisp autumn day, about 2 months after her escape from the mansion, Emily stood at the window of her hospital room. She was balancing on her own 2 feet, no support needed, as she looked out at the world beyond. The trees were aflame with color, their leaves a vibrant testament to the beauty of change and renewal. Claire came to stand beside her, wrapping an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "What are you thinking about, sweetie?" Emily leaned into her mother's embrace, a small smile playing on her lips. "I'm thinking about tomorrow," she said softly. "And all the tomorrows after that. For the first time, I feel like I have a future, a real future, and it's beautiful and a little scary and mine. All mine." As they stood there, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, Emily felt a sense of peace wash over her. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but she was ready to face them. With her mother by her side, Sarah's unwavering friendship, and her own newfound strength, Emily knew that she could overcome anything. The last light of day painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, a fitting backdrop for the new chapter that was about to begin in Emily's life. Tomorrow, she would leave the hospital and step into her future, a future full of possibilities, truth, and the freedom to be herself. The morning of Emily's discharge from the hospital arrived with a sense of excitement and nervous anticipation. Sunlight streamed through the window as Emily, with Claire's help, packed the few belongings she had accumulated during her stay. Each item held a memory of her journey: get-well cards from Sarah and her classmates, a small potted plant that had flourished under her care, and a journal filled with her thoughts and hopes for the future. As Emily zipped up her bag, she caught sight of her reflection in the mirror. The girl staring back at her was a far cry from the frail, dependent child who had entered the hospital months ago. Her cheeks held a healthy glow, her eyes sparkled with newfound confidence, and she stood tall on her own 2 feet. It was like seeing herself for the first time. "Ready to go, sweetheart?" Claire asked, her voice soft with emotion. Emily took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready." They made their way through the hospital corridors, stopping to say goodbye to the nurses, doctors, and therapists who had become like family over the past months. There were hugs, tears, and promises to stay in touch. Emily's physical therapist, a kind-faced woman named Lisa, gave her a final piece of advice. "Remember, Emily, your strength isn't just in your muscles. It's in your heart and your mind. Keep pushing forward, even when it gets tough." Emily nodded, grateful for the wisdom and support that had carried her this far. As they reached the hospital entrance, Emily paused, her hand on the door. This was it, the threshold between her old life and the new one waiting for her. With a deep breath, she pushed the door open and stepped out into the crisp autumn air. To her surprise, a small crowd had gathered outside. Sarah was there with her parents, holding a "Welcome Home, Emily" banner. Some of Emily's classmates, whom she had only known through video calls before, were present too, their faces beaming with excitement. Even a few reporters stood at a respectful distance, their presence a reminder of the public interest her story had generated. Sarah rushed forward, enveloping Emily in a tight hug. "You did it, Em. You're really here." Emily hugged her friend back, feeling a rush of gratitude for Sarah's unwavering support throughout this journey. As Claire helped Emily navigate through the well-wishers, they made their way to a waiting car. Sarah's parents had offered them a place to stay until they could find a more permanent living situation, a generosity that touched Emily deeply. The drive to Sarah's house was a revelation. Emily pressed her face against the window, drinking in sights she had only seen through glass for years. The vibrant fall colors, people walking their dogs, children playing in parks, everyday scenes that now seemed extraordinary. Settling into Sarah's guest room, Emily felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was her first night of true freedom, away from the hospital's routines and constant supervision. As she unpacked her few possessions, she came across the journal she had started in the hospital. Opening it to a blank page, she began to write. "Today marks the beginning of my new life. I'm scared, but I'm also more excited than I've ever been. For the first time, I get to decide who I am and who I want to become. It's overwhelming, but in the best possible way." The days that followed were a whirlwind of new experiences. Emily, with Claire's support, started the process of enrolling in school, real, in-person school. The idea of sitting in a classroom, surrounded by peers, was both thrilling and terrifying. Sarah proved to be an invaluable guide, helping Emily navigate the social intricacies of teenage life. They spent hours talking about everything from classes to crushes, filling in the gaps of shared experiences that Emily had missed. One afternoon, as they sat in Sarah's backyard, Emily broached a subject that had been weighing on her mind. "Do you think people will treat me differently? You know, because of everything?" Sarah considered this for a moment. "Probably, at first. Your story is pretty incredible, Em. But once they get to know you, the real you, that's what will matter most." Emily nodded, taking comfort in her friend's words. As the weeks passed, Emily and Claire began the process of building their new life together. They found a small apartment not far from Sarah's house, a cozy space that they could make their own. Decorating became a bonding experience, each chosen item a symbol of their fresh start. Emily's first day of school arrived faster than she expected. Standing in front of the mirror, adjusting her new backpack, she felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. Claire appeared behind her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've got this, Emily. Just be yourself, that's more than enough." With a nod and a deep breath, Emily headed out to meet Sarah, who was waiting to walk with her to school. As they approached the school building, Emily felt the eyes of curious students upon her. But instead of shrinking away, she stood tall, Sarah by her side. Stepping through the school doors, Emily felt as though she was stepping into a whole new world, one full of possibilities, challenges, and the promise of a future she could shape with her own hands. As she made her way to her first class, Emily's heart swelled with a mixture of nervousness and excitement. This was it, the true beginning of her new life. Whatever came next, she was ready to face it head-on, with courage, determination, and the support of those who loved her. The school bell rang, signaling the start of a new day, a new chapter, and a future brimming with potential. Emily took her seat, opened her notebook, and prepared to write the next pages of her story, a story that was finally, truly her own. As the seasons changed, so did Emily's life. Winter melted into spring, and with it came a blossoming of new experiences and personal growth. The girl who had once been confined to a wheelchair was now walking the halls of her high school with confidence, her step steady and sure. Emily's integration into school life had its challenges, but she faced them with determination. There were whispers and curious glances at first, but as Sarah had predicted, people soon came to know Emily for who she truly was, a bright, kind, and resilient young woman with a unique perspective on life. One sunny afternoon in late spring, Emily sat in the school library, poring over a hefty biology textbook. Her fascination with the human body and medical science had grown out of her experiences, and she found herself drawn to understanding the very systems that had been used to control her for so long. "Hey, Em," Sarah's voice broke through her concentration. "Don't forget about the assembly this afternoon." Emily looked up, a mix of excitement and nervousness flickering across her face. "How could I forget? I've been practicing my speech for weeks." The school had invited Emily to speak at a special assembly on resilience and overcoming adversity. It was a daunting task, but one she had embraced as an opportunity to turn her painful past into a source of inspiration for others. As Emily stood at the podium later that day, facing a sea of attentive faces, she felt a surge of strength. Her mother and Sarah sat in the front row, their encouraging smiles grounding her. "A year ago," Emily began, her voice clear and steady, "I believed my life was limited to the confines of a single house and the boundaries of a wheelchair. I was told my body was broken, that I would never experience the world as you do. But here I stand before you today, not as a victim, but as a survivor." She went on to share her story, the deception, the discovery, and the difficult journey to reclaim her life. As she spoke, she saw tears in the eyes of some students, and looks of awe on the faces of others. "The hardest chains to break are the ones in our minds," Emily continued. "I learned that our greatest limitations are often the ones we accept without question. But I also learned that with truth, love, and determination, we can overcome even the most daunting obstacles." As she concluded her speech, the auditorium erupted in applause. Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. In sharing her story, she had not only inspired others but had also taken another step in her own healing process. After the assembly, as students and teachers approached to thank her for her courage, Emily caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd. It was Dr. Reeves, the doctor who had first raised questions about her treatment. "Emily," he said, his eyes shining with pride, "I can't express how wonderful it is to see you like this. Your recovery, your strength, it's nothing short of miraculous." Emily smiled, shaking his hand warmly. "Thank you, Dr. Reeves. Without your initial doubts, who knows how long it might have taken for the truth to come out." As the school year drew to a close, Emily found herself reflecting on the incredible journey of the past months. She had not only caught up academically but had excelled, her innate intelligence finally given the chance to flourish. Her friendships, particularly with Sarah, had deepened, and she had even started to tentatively explore the world of dating. One evening, as Emily and Claire sat on the balcony of their apartment, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant hues, Claire turned to her daughter with a question. "Emily, I've been offered a research position back in Europe. It's an amazing opportunity, but I wanted to know how you feel about it. We could start fresh somewhere new, if you'd like." Emily was quiet for a moment, considering. Then she shook her head, a soft smile on her face. "Mom, I appreciate you asking, but this is home now. I've built a life here, faced my fears, made real friends. I don't want to run away from my past anymore. I want to stay and continue to grow, right here where it all began." Claire's eyes welled with tears as she pulled Emily into a tight embrace. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. So incredibly proud." As summer arrived, bringing with it the promise of new adventures, Emily stood at a crossroads. The legal proceedings against her grandmother and Mr. Harrison had concluded, with both facing the consequences of their actions. Emily had chosen not to attend the trials, focusing instead on her own healing and future. On the last day of school, Emily found herself back in the library, this time surrounded by a group of friends as they made plans for the summer. As laughter and excited chatter filled the air, Emily felt a profound sense of belonging. Later, as she walked home with Sarah, Emily paused on the sidewalk, looking back at the school building. "You okay, Em?" Sarah asked, concern in her voice. Emily nodded, a serene smile spreading across her face. "More than okay. I was just thinking, a year ago, I couldn't have imagined any of this. Now, I can't imagine my life any other way." As they continued their walk, the setting sun cast long shadows behind them, shadows of the past that no longer held power over Emily's future. She had faced her demons, reclaimed her life, and emerged stronger than ever. The road ahead was wide open, full of possibilities and potential. Emily Thompson, once a prisoner in her own home, was now free to write her own story, a story of resilience, hope, and the indomitable strength of the human spirit. As she reached her apartment building, Emily took a deep breath of the warm summer air. Tomorrow was a new day, another chance to live, to learn, and to grow. And she was ready for whatever adventures lay ahead, knowing that she had the strength within her to face any challenge that came her way. Emily's journey had come full circle, from confinement to freedom, from deception to truth, from weakness to strength. And as she stepped into her home, greeted by her mother's warm smile, she knew that this was not an ending, but a beautiful, promising beginning.